Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping us reach 1,000 subscribers. We're now aiming for 2,000, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. My family kept dropping hints about something big in the works for my 50th birthday. Whenever I asked, my wife Ren would just smile and say, "Be patient." The day finally came, and I walked into an empty house. No note, no call, nothing. Hours later, I found a photo on social media of my wife, kids, and in-laws at a beach resort. My son Theo had captioned it. "He won't even notice we're gone, LOL." I didn't comment or call, just stared. 3 days later, my WhatsApp was flooded with 47 frantic messages begging me to respond. Now it's 3:27 a.m., and I'm sitting alone in my dark, silent house, scrolling through vacation photos of my family. A vacation I wasn't invited to. On my 50th birthday. 25 years of marriage. 2 kids I thought I raised right. And this is what it all adds up to, being forgotten or, worse, intentionally left behind. Let me back up. This all started about 2 months ago when Ren began acting strangely whenever my upcoming 50th birthday was mentioned. Not in a bad way, just secretive. Whispering on the phone, closing her laptop the moment I walked into the room, that kind of thing. My daughter Paige, who's 20, started giving me these knowing little smiles and saying things like, "Dad, you're going to love what's coming for the big 5-0. Even my son Theo, who's 23 and usually too cool to care about family stuff, was dropping hints. I won't lie, it got me excited. 50 is supposed to be a milestone, right? I wasn't expecting anything extravagant. We're not wealthy. We're comfortable, but Paige's college tuition eats up a lot of our savings, and I just helped Theo with the down payment on his first apartment last month. That was $4,000 I didn't really have to spare, but that's what dads do, right? All the secrecy made me think maybe they were planning a surprise party. Ren kept telling me to be patient whenever I tried fishing for details. My father-in-law Orson even called me out of the blue last week, something he only does if he needs something fixed around his house, just to ask what day I was taking off for my birthday. I told him I had taken the actual day off, this past Tuesday. Except I didn't get the day off. At 6:15 a.m. on my birthday, my boss called asking if I could come in because of an emergency at the Riverside project. Someone had to be there, and it's always me. I called Ren from the car to tell her I'd be late, but would definitely be home by dinner. She sounded strange, distracted. Just said, "That works out fine," and hung up quickly. I spent my birthday dealing with a water main break and equipment issues. No one at work even knew it was my birthday. I didn't mention it because I'm not that guy, and honestly, I was just looking forward to whatever was waiting at home. I even stopped on the way back to buy a bottle of good whiskey. Figured I at least deserved that much. At 5:53 p.m., I pulled into my driveway. No extra cars parked outside, so much for the surprise party. The house was completely dark. Weird, but not alarming. Maybe they were hiding. But the house was empty. No decorations. No cake. No wife. No kids. No note on the counter explaining where everyone was. I checked my phone, no messages. Called Ren straight to voicemail. Called Theo, same. Texted Paige, nothing. By 7:30 p.m., I was sitting alone at my kitchen table, staring at that unopened whiskey bottle, wondering if there had been an accident or something. I called the local hospital, nothing. Tried Ren's sister, Lauren, no answer. By 8:14 p.m., still alone on my birthday, I opened the whiskey and poured myself a glass. That's when I decided to check Instagram. I don't post much, mostly just follow the kids to keep up with what they're doing. And there it was. Posted 3 hours earlier. A photo of my entire family: Ren, Theo, Paige, Orson, his wife Kinsley, and Lauren, all smiling on a white sand beach, cocktails in hand at some fancy resort. Theo had captioned it, "Family vacation mode activated. He won't even notice we're gone, LOL. He won't even notice." The comments were worse. Ren replied with a laughing emoji, and so true. Lauren added something about workaholic husbands not appreciating the finer things. Paige, at least, hadn't commented, but she was there in the photos, sunglasses on, looking like she was having the time of her life. I sat there for, I don't even know how long, just scrolling through more photos they'd posted. Group dinners, jet ski rentals, selfies by the pool, all time-stamped, and geotagged to a resort I'd never even heard of. All of it starting 2 days earlier. Remember that Alanis Morissette song about irony? Well, it's ironic that I've spent years feeling guilty about working too much, missing school events, being too tired on weekends, all so I could provide for these people. Paige's college fund. I've been putting $500 into it every month since she was born. Theo's apartment down payment. That $4,000 I handed him last month meant I couldn't replace my 10-year-old truck this year. The mortgage I've never missed a payment on. The vacations I couldn't afford to take because someone always needed something more important. I don't know if it was shock, rage, or some strange sense of calm that kicked in, but I didn't call them, didn't text, didn't comment on the photos. I just poured another glass of whiskey and started thinking hard. The first thing I did was check our bank accounts. Sure enough, $4,000 had been withdrawn from our joint savings account last Friday. The exact amount I'd given Theo for his apartment. Coincidence? I don't think so. I scrolled through older social media posts and found Orson had been dropping hints about a special family trip for weeks. So this wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. Planned without me. Planned around me. Planned despite my birthday. By midnight, I'd gone from hurt to pissed to ice-cold calculation. I opened my laptop and started documenting everything: screenshots of the posts, bank statements, a timeline of the lies they told me about my birthday surprise. Here's the thing people forget about the quiet, reliable guy who just keeps showing up. We notice things. We remember things. And when we finally had enough, we know exactly where all the bodies are buried. I spent my birthday night compiling a complete accounting of our finances, 25 years of marriage laid out in Excel spreadsheets. Who paid for what? Who contributed? Who sacrificed? The numbers told a story they weren't going to like. Around 2 a.m., I found something else. A credit card statement buried in Ren's email. Yeah, we shared passwords, or used to anyway. A card I didn't even know existed. $113,000 in debt, built up over the last 3 years. Designer clothes, spa days, lunches with Lauren that somehow cost $200 each, and recent charges from the resort they were staying at, nearly $6,000 so far. I'm not the kind of guy who usually cries, but I'll admit, I felt that pressure building behind my eyes. Not sadness, anger. The kind that comes from realizing just how invisible you are to the people you've given everything. Morning came, and still no messages asking if I was okay. No birthday texts. Nothing. Just more beach photos and a video of Theo doing karaoke with Orson, captioned, "Dad would hate this LOL." I showered, went to work, came home, and checked social media again. Day 2 of their vacation was in full swing. Comments from Ren's friends asking how the resort was. Her reply? Heaven. So nice to get away from real life for a while. Real life. That's me. I'm real life, the thing she needed to get away from. I poured another whiskey and made some decisions. First, I called my bank at 9 a.m. sharp on day 2 and had them reroute my upcoming paycheck to a new account they helped me set up. Second, I called my buddy Cody, who went through a divorce last year, and got his lawyer's number. Third, I started moving Ren's things to the guest bedroom. This wasn't me being hasty. It was me being methodical. Like discovering termites in your foundation, you don't just patch over it and hope for the best. You dig down, figure out how deep the damage goes, and decide if the structure is even worth saving. On day 3 of their vacation, day 2 after my forgotten birthday, I finally got a text from Paige. Just a casual, "Hey Dad, how's it going?" Like they weren't all at a beach resort without me. Like it hadn't been my milestone birthday. Like everything was normal. I didn't answer. An hour later, Theo texted, asking if I could check if he'd left his laptop charger in his old room. Nothing about where they were. Nothing about my birthday. I didn't answer that either. By evening, the messages started showing some concern. Ren texted, asking if I was mad about something. Paige called twice. Theo sent a weird message saying, "Mom's freaking out a little. Can you just text her back?" I didn't answer. Instead, I posted my first Instagram photo in months, just me at home with a birthday cake I'd bought myself from the grocery store. No caption, no tags, just a date stamp. That's when the dam broke. At exactly 9:44 p.m. on day 3 of them being gone, my WhatsApp started blowing up message after message. Ren in full panic mode. Theo actually showing concern for once. Paige sending voice messages that grew increasingly tearful. By midnight, I counted 47 messages across all platforms: texts, WhatsApp, Instagram DMs, even emails. The last one from Ren just said, "We're coming home tomorrow. Please be there. We need to talk." Oh, we'll talk, all right. But first, I needed to make one more stop to pick up new locks for the doors. Because some lessons about taking people for granted need to be carved in stone, not written in sand. So, the 47 messages. Message number 1 came at exactly 9:44 p.m., 3 days into their beach vacation. Just a simple, "Nelson, are you there?" from Ren. By message number 47 at 3:28 a.m., she had escalated to, "Please, just answer me. I'm freaking out. I've been married for 25 years, and not once in all that time have I deliberately ignored my wife when she needed me. Not once have I shut her out when she was worried. Even during our worst fights, I always picked up the phone. But there's a first time for everything. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat on our back deck, watching those messages roll in while scrolling through their Instagram feed. The contrast was something else. Ren typing, "Nelson, please, I'm worried," while her profile showed her grinning at a beachfront restaurant just 2 hours earlier. Theo asking if I was okay while tagging himself at a jet ski rental. Paige sending tearful voice messages from a poolside cabana. Around 5 a.m., I made coffee and started methodically documenting everything: screenshots of social media posts, bank statements, text threads. I printed it all out and organized it into a folder. Sounds crazy, but it helped me think. The new deadbolt and doorknob set sat on the kitchen counter, still in its packaging. I wasn't sure yet if I'd install them. That felt like a line I might not be able to uncross. At 7:15 a.m., the first call from Orson came through. I let it go to voicemail. He left a 2-minute message that started off concerned but ended with him saying I was behaving like a child. Classic Orson. Always thought I wasn't good enough for his daughter. Always made those little comments about my modest house or reliable car code for you're not as successful as I wanted for Ren. I went to work like usual, did my job, came home. The messages kept coming. Theo. Dad. Seriously, this isn't funny anymore. Mom is having a meltdown. Paige. Daddy, please just text back so we know you're alive. Ren. Nelson. I've called the neighbors and they say your truck is there. Why aren't you answering? Lauren. Hey Nelson, everyone's worried about you. Whatever you're upset about, this isn't the way to handle it. Grow up. That last one from Lauren almost made me break my silence. Almost. But then I remembered her comment about workaholic husbands and kept quiet. I spent that evening fortifying my financial defenses. Called the credit card companies and removed Ren as an authorized user on my 2 main cards. Logged into our mortgage account and ensured the next payment due in 3 days would come from my new, separate account. Changed my direct deposit information at work. Then I did something that even surprised me. I made a spreadsheet breaking down our household expenses with cold, hard percentages. Who paid for what? Who contributed what? For the last 10 years. The numbers told a story Ren wouldn't like. 82% of our joint expenses came from my income. 94% of our retirement savings came from me. 100% of the kids' college funds came from me. And Ren's contributions? Looking through our joint account history, most of her deposits went right back out: hair appointments, lunches with Lauren, clothes, and what she called household necessities that somehow always included expensive candles and throw pillows no one was allowed to actually throw. Does that sound bitter? Maybe it is. Because 25 years of feeling vaguely guilty for working too much hits different when you realize it was your work funding their fun. Around midnight, I stumbled across a text thread between Ren and Lauren from 2 weeks earlier. Ren, should we even tell Nelson about the trip? Lauren, why bother? He'll just complain about the cost. Ren, true LOL. It's not like he ever pays attention to anything but work anyway. Lauren, he probably won't notice until the weekend. Ren, if that's soon. That was the moment something inside me went cold. I had been clinging to a tiny hope that maybe, just maybe, there was some massive misunderstanding. That text killed it. By day 4 of their vacation, the messages took on a new tone: anger. Theo, Dad, WTF? Mom's been crying all night. What is your problem? Ren, I don't know what game you're playing, but this is cruel. Nelson. Orson, you're proving exactly what I've always thought about you: selfish and immature. Day 5 brought panic as they realized I was still keeping silent. Ren, we're cutting the vacation short. Coming home tomorrow. Please be there. Paige. Dad, I'm scared something happened to you. Theo, if you're doing this on purpose, it's seriously messed up. I still didn't respond, but I did start preparing for their return. I moved Ren's clothes and personal items to the guest room, changed the Wi-Fi password, and installed a passcode lock on my computer. Small actions meant to send a clear message. You can't pretend nothing happened. That night, Paige left me a particularly revealing voice message. She was crying, her voice shaky as she apologized for missing my birthday. She admitted she'd wanted to call me, but Grandma Kinsley had said it would ruin the surprise they were planning. Paige confessed she'd felt uneasy about the trip from the beginning, but everyone made her feel like she was overreacting. According to her, Orson had paid for most of it as a family bonding experience. I almost called her back. Almost. But then I remembered her in those beach photos, smiling without a care in the world, not looking conflicted at all. 20-year-olds are adults who make their own choices. The morning they were set to return, I finally installed the new deadbolt. Not to lock them out permanently, I'm not that petty, but to make a point. They'd have to ring the doorbell, face me, and acknowledge what they'd done before walking back into our home as if nothing had happened. I took the day off work and waited. At 2:47 p.m., Ren texted me saying their flight had landed. At 4:32 p.m., I heard their Uber pulling into the driveway, multiple voices, luggage wheels on concrete, then silence. I imagine that's when they realized their keys no longer worked. The doorbell rang. I took my time answering it. When I finally opened the door, I found them all standing there, sunburned, exhausted, trying to force casual smiles. Ren clutching a gift bag that definitely hadn't been packed in their original luggage. Theo looking anywhere but at me. Paige on the verge of tears. Orson and Kinsley behind them, their faces set in matching expressions of disapproval. I stood there in the doorway, silent. Ren started rambling about how worried they'd been, how they'd called hospitals, how they cut their trip short out of concern. Then she shifted her story, saying the trip had been planned as a pre-birthday celebration, but things got complicated, and they were planning to surprise me with a special dinner when they returned. I didn't say a word. I just pulled out my phone, opened Instagram, and held up the screen with Theo's post. He won't even notice we gone LOL. The silence that followed was something else. Theo stared at his shoes, Paige started crying in earnest, and Rin reached for my phone, but I easily moved it away. Orson stepped forward, insisting this was ridiculous and that we needed to talk like adults. I finally spoke. I told Orson he wasn't welcome in my house today, that he could drop the luggage and leave. The look on his face like he'd been slapped. For probably the first time in his life, someone told him no. The great Orson, used to everyone playing by his rules, stood there sputtering on my doorstep while I stared him down. Kinsley tried to play peacemaker, saying they were all exhausted from traveling and maybe we could talk tomorrow. I agreed tomorrow was fine, but not for Orson. Not ever. After they left, I let Ren, Theo, and Paige into the house. But it felt different with them. They're smaller, tense. Ren noticed her things were missing from our bedroom almost immediately and demanded to know what I'd done. That's when I brought out the folder screenshots, bank statements, expense breakdowns, spread it all out on the kitchen table, and asked one simple question. When exactly did I become so worthless to this family? Ren tried to flip the script, claiming I was being dramatic, that it was just a vacation, and they had planned to celebrate my birthday when they returned. I showed her the text thread with Lauren, and her face went pale. Theo tried to brush off his Instagram caption, saying it was a joke, that everyone exaggerates online. I showed him his own comments from the past year, all the subtle digs about me being absent, boring, just the typical dad. His excuses dried up. Paige kept crying, but through her tears, she let something slip. The trip had been planned for months. Originally, I was supposed to be included, but Orson had convinced Ren it should be a family reset without my negative energy weighing them down. By 7 p.m., we'd hit the core of it. The ugly truth nobody wanted to admit. They'd built a narrative around me. Nelson the boring provider. Nelson the absent father. Nelson the workaholic. It made it easy for them to justify excluding me, to convince themselves I wouldn't care about being left out, that I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't feel. And the worst part? They weren't entirely wrong. I had let work define me. I had missed events for overtime. I had kept quiet when I should have spoken up. But I was speaking up now. I told them I'd moved most of my money to a separate account, that I'd cover the mortgage and utilities for 3 months while Ren figured out her next steps, that I'd continue supporting Paige's education, but directly not through their discretionary spending. They had 3 months to either rebuild our marriage on new terms or prepare for divorce. Theo stormed out, calling me unfair. Paige fled to her room, sobbing. Ren just sat there, staring at the pile of evidence I'd laid out, looking like someone had just told her Santa Claus wasn't real. Around midnight, my phone pinged with one final message from Ren. I never meant for any of this to happen. The trip was supposed to be your gift, some time alone to relax. We were going to surprise you with something special when we got back. I don't know how things got so twisted. I read it 3 times, and each time my reaction was the same pure disbelief. Even now, after everything, she was still spinning, still rewriting reality. I typed my response carefully. I have the receipts, Ren. All 47 of them, plus about 100 more you don't even know about yet. The time for lies is over. Then I turned off my phone and went to sleep in my own bed for the first time in days. Alone, but not lonely. There's a difference. Tomorrow would bring hard conversations and even harder decisions. But for the first time in 25 years, those decisions would be on my terms. Finally, the first morning after the confrontation, I woke up at 4:17 a.m. to the sound of someone crying. Muffled, but definitely coming from inside the house. It took me a moment to realize it was Ren, crying in the guest room. The weird thing? I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, just nothing. For those asking for updates, it's been 2 weeks since my family returned from their beach getaway. 2 weeks of awkward breakfasts and tense dinners. 2 weeks of whispered phone calls and slammed doors. 2 weeks of reality crashing down on 25 years of marriage. The morning after they returned, I expected big, dramatic scenes, tearful apologies, desperate promises to change. That's not what happened. Instead, Ren came downstairs at 7:30 a.m., made coffee like it was just another day, and asked if I'd gotten it out of my system yet, as if my reaction was some kind of tantrum that needed to run its course. I just stared at her for a long moment before sliding my phone across the counter. Screenshots still open. The ones where she and Lauren joked about whether I'd even noticed they were gone. The ones where she laughed at Theo's caption. She looked at them like she was seeing them for the first time. Then she tried a new angle, claimed her phone must have been hacked, that she never wrote those things, that someone must have used her account. At exactly 7:43 a.m., I realized my wife of 25 years would rather invent an elaborate conspiracy theory than admit she'd been callous and cruel. So, I handed her the printed bank statements, highlighted every withdrawal from our joint account for the trip, showed her the credit card statements from her secret card, laid out how I'd supported this family for decades while she racked up $133,000 in hidden debt. You want to know the craziest part? She didn't even seem that concerned about the money, just kept insisting Orson would help her pay it off. That I was being petty for focusing on dollars and cents when the real issue was my workaholism. Isn't that something? I'm the bad guy for working 60-hour weeks to pay for everything, including her shopping habit. The kids were a different story. Theo showed up around noon that first day, hungover and defensive. Launched into how I was overreacting, how it was just a stupid social media post, how I was being toxic by making such a big deal about everything. So, I showed him my social media feed. The comments from his friends, things like, "LOL, your dad sounds like my dad, total boomer energy, and bro, just tell him you're busy when he tries to hang." That's what I do. I asked him what kind of man mocks his father online to look cool to his friends. What kind of son takes $4,000 for an apartment down payment, then spends the same amount partying at a beach resort? 2 weeks later, Theo still didn't have good answers. He mumbled something about me not understanding how social media works and left. It's been 5 days, and he hasn't been back. Paige was different. She actually apologized, said she felt pressured by Kinsley and Orson to go along with the trip, admitted she'd wanted to call me on my birthday, but Rin told her I was probably too busy anyway. I believe her mostly. But I also saw those beach photos, Paige grinning at sunset cocktail hours she's not even legally old enough to attend. Not exactly tortured by guilt. So, yes, I'm still paying for her tuition, but directly to the school, now not through the joint account, where money has a habit of mysteriously vanishing. Around day 3 after their return, things escalated. Orson showed up unannounced at 6:15 p.m., right as I was microwaving leftovers. He walked in without knocking because Ren had given him the new door code. He started immediately, ranting about how I was being unreasonable, how I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding. I didn't yell. I didn't throw him out. I just calmly asked him how much the resort cost. He puffed up, saying that wasn't the point. I asked again exactly how much did you spend taking my family on vacation without me? Then he dropped the bombshell. $8,600 for 5 people over 5 days. Do the math, that's over $300 per person per day. I've never spent that much on any vacation in my life. Our family trips were always budget-friendly camping, road trips, the occasional weekend at a basic hotel with a pool for the kids. I asked Orson if he knew how much I had saved in Paige's college fund. He didn't answer, so I told him $25,000. Scraped together, $500 at a time over years. Money that could have gone toward vacations, a better car, or home improvements. But I chose her future instead. Then I asked him how much he'd contributed to his granddaughter's education. His face went red, sputtering about how that wasn't the point. How he'd created opportunities for Ren and the kids in other ways. Opportunities like teaching them it's okay to exclude the person who finances their lives. Opportunities like showing them that loyalty and respect matter less than beaches and cocktails. I told him he had 30 seconds to leave my house before I called the police to report trespassing. He left at 6:27 p.m. Haven't heard from him directly since. Ren lost it after that. Called me cruel for speaking to her father that way. Said I was jealous of him. Said the real reason I was upset was because I could never provide the kind of experiences for my family that he could. And you know what? Maybe there's a grain of truth in that. I've never had Orson money and never will. But I've had Orson time. 25 years of it. Time I spent working to build something for us while he was off enjoying early retirement on inherited wealth. By the end of the first week, the battle lines were drawn. Ren moved in with Lauren temporarily. Theo stopped responding to my texts entirely. Paige started coming around more often, but usually only when Ren wasn't there. The family split into factions. Ren's siblings and parents rallied around her, posting vague supportive messages on social media about standing by family during hard times. My sister, who lives 3 states away, sent me a care package with whiskey and a note saying she always thought Ren was kind of a princess. Then the financial reality hit. 10 days after returning from the trip, Ren called in a panic because her credit card had been declined at some boutique. I'd already removed her as an authorized user on all my accounts. She demanded to know if I was going to keep punishing her by withholding money. I explained, calmly, like I was speaking to a child, that I wasn't withholding anything, I was simply separating our finances. Her income was still hers. My income was now mine. The joint account held exactly 3 months' worth of mortgage and utility payments, and after that, we'd either have new arrangements or separate lives. That's when she started crying real tears this time. Not over our marriage, not over my feelings, not even about the family falling apart. It was about the money. At 11:43 p.m. that night, I got a text from Orson. Just 4 words. Let's discuss a settlement. I didn't respond. There was nothing to settle yet. No divorce papers filed, no lawyers officially retained, though I'd already had 3 consultations. Just a family in free fall, finally facing gravity after years of pretending they could float above reality on my dime. 2 weeks into this new normal, something unexpected happened. Theo showed up at the house at 8:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. Unshowered, eyes red, looking like he hadn't slept all night. He wasn't there to apologize, exactly. More like he'd finally done the math. His new apartment, the one I'd helped him with the down payment, turned out to be far more expensive than he'd calculated. Utilities, internet, groceries, all the little necessities that magically appeared at home but cost real money in the world. He'd already blown through his savings. The vacation had cost him more than expected, too. He'd put excursions and drinks on his own credit card, assuming he could just figure it out later. Now, later had arrived, and he was drowning. Part of me, a small, wounded part, wanted to tell him this was a valuable life lesson and send him on his way. But the father in me couldn't do it. Instead, I made him breakfast, taught him how to create a basic budget spreadsheet, showed him exactly what things actually cost in the real world, the world I'd been silently managing while he mocked me online. By lunchtime, he looked shell-shocked, not just from the financial reality check, but from seeing, maybe for the first time, what I actually did for this family. Beyond just existing as a punchline for his social media jokes. He didn't apologize. Not directly, but he did something that hit me harder than any apology could have. He deleted all his social media apps right there at the kitchen table. Said he needed to clear his head without the constant noise. Asked if he could come over on Sundays so I could help him figure out this whole adult thing. Progress, I guess. Ren's been a different story. After the initial shock wore off, she shifted into full damage control mode. Started calling mutual friends to explain her side. Posted a long, vague Facebook update about healing from unexpected life changes that made it sound like I'd had some kind of breakdown. Lauren's been her bullhorn, telling anyone who'll listen that I'm having a midlife crisis, that I'm being financially abusive by cutting rent off, that the vacation was meant to be a gift to me, not a deliberate exclusion. I haven't bothered countering any of it. The people who really know me have seen through it immediately. The rest aren't worth my energy. Paige has been caught in the middle, guilty for going on the trip, guilty for still wanting a relationship with me, guilty for being angry at her mom. Just guilt all around. I've tried to make it clear she doesn't have to choose sides. I'll always be her dad, regardless of what happens with Ren. Her college is still covered. Her future is secure. 3 weeks in, Ren finally came by to talk for real. She sat at the kitchen counter where we've shared breakfast for 20 years and asked if I was really going through with this, if I was truly willing to throw away our marriage over one mistake. I pulled out my phone, showed her the 47 messages again, and asked her which one acknowledged it was my birthday, which one apologized for excluding me from a family vacation, which one showed any real concern beyond fear of getting caught or exposed. She couldn't point to a single one. Then I asked the question that had been burning in me for weeks. When did I become someone you could just write off? When did I become so invisible that you thought I wouldn't notice or care? What she said next changed everything. She told me it wasn't sudden, that for years, maybe a decade, she'd felt like we were living parallel lives. She said she'd tried to connect, but I was always working, always tired, always focused on providing rather than being present. That eventually, she just adapted, built a life that didn't require my active participation. And you know what? That hit hard, because there's some truth in it. I have prioritized providing over being present at times. I have missed events for work. I have been too tired for date nights after 60-hour weeks. But I also coached Theo's Little League games, helped Paige with science projects, mowed the lawn, fixed the leaky faucets, kept the cars running, and made sure there was always a roof over our heads. I showed up in all the ways I knew how, just not the ways Ren wanted. Apparently, that wasn't enough. We talked for 4 hours that day. Real talk. Hard talk about expectations and resentments, and the slow drift that happens when 2 people stop seeing each other clearly. At midnight, she asked if there was any chance if I could forgive her for the trip, for the secret credit card, for the years of small betrayals that led to the big one. I told her I honestly didn't know. That forgiveness might be possible, but forgetting wasn't. That trust, once broken, leaves scars even when it heals. She moved the last of her things to Lauren's the next day. Said she needed time to figure out who she is without me, whatever that means. It's been a month now since my 50th birthday. A month since I came home to an empty house and discovered just how invisible I'd become to the people I thought were my world. Some days I'm angry. Some days I'm just tired. But most days, I'm finding a strange new peace in being visible to myself for the first time in decades. I've started swimming at the community center 3 mornings a week. I've been going to happy hour with guys from work occasionally. Even joined a hiking group that meets on Saturdays. Theo comes by every Sunday now for what he calls adulting lessons. We cook dinner together, go over his budget, talk about things that matter. Paige splits her time between Lauren's place and mine, navigating the new family landscape with as much grace as a 20-year-old can manage. Ren texts daily, alternating between nostalgic memories and practical questions about bills. I respond to the practical ones and leave the rest on read. Yesterday, I received a letter from a divorce attorney representing her. Standard stuff. Reasonable requests, actually. She's not trying to bleed me dry financially, which surprised me. As for me, I finally changed my social media status from married to it's complicated. Because it is. Life is complicated. Families are complicated. Love, hurt, and forgiveness are complicated. But one thing isn't complicated anymore: I'm not invisible. Not to my family, not to my friends, and most importantly, not to myself. That visibility? It was worth the price of a beach vacation I never got to take. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.